Am I starting?
This is your show.
Hey, am I
This is
starting?
your type of show.
Oh, okay.
I said here's Adam,
Oh.
and then you just don't talk.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I am back for the animating tutorial and rigging.
Yay!
So I'm just gonna talk to myself here as I try to get this thing to work. So I've already. Actually, I'm just gonna speak into the mic here.
Yeah, just do that. It's okay. Do whatever makes you feel comfortable.
All right, I'm just gonna give a quick demonstration of the rigging and how it works in Blender. It works in pretty much the same way as anything else, but the most simple demonstration that I can make for something that moves is, say we have a large, or just like a long column here, and I'm just gonna cut like we did last time, and just add these joints. And usually it's better to have two edges for each joint, so that way it'll bend more smoothly. Yeah, I don't think I'm just gonna talk into the mic if that's okay.
You can talk a little bit louder.
Alright.
Again, get on the screen.
Alright, so now that we have these joint areas, I'm just gonna start rigging this this thing. Probably call it a tentacle. So I'm just gonna add the bones. You want to go back into object mode, and to bring up the add menu, you hold shift and press A, or you can also find it underneath here, add, and you can find mesh, and you can also find armature, which is where you can add single bones. So you want to add a single bone. Now right now it's hidden inside it, so what you want to do is go through wireframe mode to see it in wireframe mode. And I'm just hitting 1 on the numpad to go into front view. And again, you can toggle orthographic and perspective view. Orthographic will make everything look like flat on a plane, and that'll just make it easy to control. So just move this thing down in edit mode. Or I'm in object mode, but if you want to edit it, you want to go to edit mode, so you can hit the button down here. And then you can go into edit mode, and here, while you're in edit mode, you can edit the bone by moving it around. You can still move it around on the axis, or pressing G to freely move it. Let's undo that. Let's move it down. So you can move the whole bone by clicking on the spear-looking thing. Or these balls at the end here, they will allow you to shrink it, move it around. I'm just pressing G here, and move it side to side. So I'm just going to shrink it down, or actually, no, I'm not going to shrink it down. I'm going to move it up this way. And then you want to extrude just like you extrude a polygon. You have that ball selected, and you press E to extrude. And if you want to extrude straight up, just press Z to extrude on the Z-axis. And then you just extrude again. And let's do another one, all the way to the top. So I believe we had 4 joints areas. 1, 2, 3, 4. You just kind of want to line it up where the joints are, where the bone, the balls are. So let's just move them down a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just kind of doing a little demonstration here before we can get to the character. All right. So after that, you go back into object mode. I'm just hitting tab to go back into object mode. You can hit tab to toggle it back and forth. And first you select the bone, and then you select the box through the mesh. And then what you want to do is you want to hit Control P. No, wait, sorry. Control W. Oh, my bad. What was it again? Hold on, let me try to figure this out. I totally forgot what the menu was. Nope, not that one. Thought that was it. There you go. Okay. First you select the mesh, and then you select the active bone. So when it's highlighted in orange here, the lighter orange is the one that's actively selected, and the one that's like a darker orange, that one is the one that you selected previously. So you want to select the mesh first, and then the bone.
Someone came to smash button at the same time.
So have that actively selected, and then you hold Control P to bring up the Set Parent menu. And then you can see you can have several options here. What we want to do is just do it automatically. Blender's really good by just automatically weighting it. And you won't see anything right now, but if you go into, go to where you select Object Mode, and if you go to Pose Mode, while you have the bone selected, and if you select a bone, it'll be highlighted in blue. That means that you're in pose mode, and you can actually start manipulating the bone by, pretty much by doing any of the manipulation tools like rotating or pressing G to freely move it, and you can see it moving. So now you've successfully rigged this this tentacle thing. And you can go into, and that's how we animate. We just go into pose mode and just move and manipulate these bones, rotate them, move them around, twist them, and then what we do in the animation mode window is we set the keyframes. So if we want to have this guy move from side to side, what we would do is go up here where it says default. You want to go to animation. And then that will bring up this thing called the dope sheet. And this is where you really tweak and just like adjust your keyframes. And if you want to set a keyframe, you're still in pose mode. Just be sure to press Z to go in wireframe. It's still selected in blue. So while we have this pose for the tentacle, down here where there's a timeline down here, you can see you can move it from the keyframe 0 to frame 0 to all the way to, I think it's 250. If you want to adjust that, we don't need that many frames. At the bottom here, there's start and end, and we want to start at 1, but let's reduce this down to, say, 96. If movies are 24 frames a second and you just want like 4 seconds of, yeah, I think it's like 96. Oops. So let's set this to 96 frames. So we're going to animate this thing for 4 seconds. So the first frame is frame 1. And just to make sure that you have frame 1 selected, in the dope sheet it should say 1 in this little green box here. And if it's hard to control it, it's the same navigation as you have in the viewport. So you can still zoom in, zoom out using the scroll wheel, or you can move it side to side by using the middle mouse button. So you want to zoom in so that's easier to select frame 1. And while you have frame 1 selected, go back to the viewport and have just any one of the bones selected. And what you want to do is you hit I to bring up the Insert Keyframe menu. Now remember, if you can't find anything and if you don't know the shortcut for something, you can press space and you can type in whatever you want to search up. So if you search keyframe, you'll also have the option to insert the keyframe there. But what we want to do is hit I because it gives us a lot of options. You can actually keyframe anything by its location, by its rotation, or scaling. Now in this case, I just want to keyframe the whole thing, not just one bone, but the whole thing. And you just need to select one of the bones and you go to whole character. And that will make each bone that will keyframe each bone in the dope sheet, as you can see here. So these dots mean that you have it keyframed. Also in the timeline, you can see this yellow line here. That means that that frame is currently keyframed. And now let's go to, let's say, 50. Frame 50. Bless you. And then let's go back to orthographic view so it's easier to manipulate this. And let's just make this, let's have it pointing straight up. So just select each bone and just rotate it back so it's straight. I think this thing's a little twisted, but that's alright. So this will be our middle keyframe here. And what we want to do is, again, hit I, keyframe the whole character. So now in the dope sheet, you can see frame 1 has those dots and frame 50 has those dots. Those are our keyframe poses. And as you're manipulating the dope sheet or the timeline by holding the left mouse button, you can see it's already moving. Yep. So the good thing about 3D is traditionally you'd have to draw your in-betweens. You have to draw out the key poses for the keyframes, but somebody else would have to go in and draw out all the in-betweens, and that's just laborious, which is why I really prefer 3D. It does the in-betweens for you. It's all automatically, and you can actually adjust the in-betweens. There is actually a graph editor somewhere here. Here it is. So in the dope sheet on the top, the bottom left of the dope sheet, there's this 3 little dots here. Click on them, and you can actually go into the NLA editor, the dope sheet. There is also an action window somewhere here. I'm not sure why it's not showing up. Oh, it's the action windows editors right here. So I'll tell you about that later. That's just so that you can organize your animations. But yeah, you could go into the graph editor. Now, I'm not really good at playing around with the graph editor, but that's just to show you that there is an option to tweak your animation in-betweens. You can actually move these handles up and down, and you can see the graph is going up and down. It'll just adjust the depending on which handle you're doing. Your in-betweens is just gonna fasten up, or you're just gonna stylize it a little bit more. So that just gives you more fine-tuning. I've never really used it before, so I'm not sure exactly how it affects the animations, but yeah, it's just good to know. So let's go back to the dope sheet, the 3 dots, and let's keyframe our last frame here, which is frame 96. And we'll just move it to the other side. We'll just rotate from the bottom. Like that. Press I to insert a keyframe and hold character. So now we have the whole 96 frames keyframed. We can actually just go, let's go back to hit Z to get out of wireframe mode. And we can test out this animation by pressing the play button on the bottom. You can play it forward or you can play it backwards. So it's a little slow. If it's slow like this, you can actually tweak these keyframes. Actually, move them back or scale them. So the good thing actually with the dope sheet is it's the same manipulation tools, the same navigation tools as the viewport. So let's hit B in the dope sheet to do a box select. And you just want to select all of these dots. Oh, they're already selected. So the good thing, a good thing to know is when they are orange, that means those keyframes, those dots are selected. And when they're white, they're not selected. So what you want to do is hit B, box select them all, and then press S to scale them. Oh, and depending on where your cursor is, on where your green line is, that's where it's going to scale it to. So you want to go to keyframe number 1, and again, box select, and then scale it back this way. So we don't need to animate this for 4 seconds. we can just so now it ends at frame 40. So let's type in 40 for the ending frame, and let's play it now. So it's a little faster. And if you want to, you can actually add another keyframe here to have it go back into the straight pose. But yeah, that's just the basics of rigging and animating. Now, if time permits, I am going to go into character. I've already have this ninja set up. It's the same method as we did last time using extrusions, but you can also use the same the thing we did with skin modifiers as we did last time. What's up?
You can keep going.
Okay. All right. So something a little more complicated to rig is a human character. Now we're just gonna do something really basic. I actually deleted his feet so that we don't have to get into inverse kinematics today. But if we do have time, then maybe we can test it out. But I just want a simple character, a little chibi character, and I've already have this ninja character set up and smoothened out and everything. So he's perfect for mesh deforming. He already has these areas, these joint areas set up so that they can bend well, and he's actually pretty high poly, all things considered, because I already added the subdivision modifier that we did last time. So let's go into the front view, orthographic, so it's easier to handle. And I like to work in wireframe for this while we're in object mode. While we're in object mode, you want to hit Shift A to bring up the add menu. Armature single bone, and it's going to pop up all the way up here. So let's bring that down to his. This will be his hip bone. We'll just set it there, and we'll just bring this ball down to scale down the bone to about the belly, and then we hit E to extrude it to right where his neck, the bottom of his neck is, and we'll just call that the chest. And then we'll have another extrusion for the neck bone. It's just going to be a little tiny little bone here to the top of his head, to the bottom of his head. And for his actual head, it's just going to be a giant bone all the way to the top of his head. You can actually just even go outside it. All right. So now that we have his body, have his bones for his body, or actually, we should probably move this inwards. So that was in front view. Now let's go. I'm hitting the number 3 on the numpad to go into side view. And we're moving that into the middle of his body. So just make sure that the neck area lines up. So I'm just going to tweak this a little bit. Move this up. Move that little ball up to the base of his head. Yeah, we just need a little tiny little bone for his neck. And then we'll just leave the, maybe we can just, let's just keep it straight. Alright, so now that we have that, put your cursor here to add a bone for his leg. So you're clicking the mouse to adjust where the cursor is, and you're still in edit mode. So hit Shift A, and it'll just automatically place a bone where your cursor was selected there. So let's move this down to his knee. You know what? I'm undoing so that I can actually move it on the Z-axis, so that I can move it straight down. And then let's do another extrusion all the way to the base of his leg there. Since he has no feet, it'll be much easier to just animate him. So I want to move these two inward, so I'm just selecting the middle bone, both of them, holding Shift to select them both, and just moving them on the X-axis, making sure they're inside his mesh on side view. So we'll just have that there. And we'll move this in like that. All right. So it's a good thing to have a naming convention for these bones. What we're gonna do later is, since we have the bones on the right side, we can actually just duplicate it and mirror it to the other side. And the good thing about Blender is that if you follow this naming convention, it should duplicate the right side to the left side, and it'll keep the naming convention that you give it. So let's call this. Select this bone and let's call this the thigh. And the naming convention you want to use for the mirror is dot R. R for right side. Actually, this is his left side. So dot L. And then select that. Oh, I'm only going to, in order to name the bones, you're just going to this bone icon here next to the guy. So that's where you're naming the bones. So you're selecting the bones, you're naming it shin.l. And once you have that set up, let's call these hip and chest. So once you have the leg bone set up, just select the first one, and select that first, and select the hip bone. And what you're doing is you're gonna connect the two. You're gonna set a parent to. You're gonna make this the parent of this bone, so that they're connected, and you're gonna see this this dotted line. So select that first and this one, and then hold Control P. That'll bring up the Make Parent menu, and you want to do Keep Offset, and that'll just give it a connection there. So that way, when you're moving the whole, when you're moving one thing, you can see it still has that connection. And if you're moving the body, same thing. Let's get back into edit mode and the front view, and let's do the arms. So have the cursor selected there, and while you're in edit mode, hold Shift A. That'll give it the upper arm. And we'll just have it there for his elbow. Extrude again to the base of his hand, and then we'll extrude one more time for the actual hand. Now we won't need to worry about fingers or anything now. That will get into stuff like inverse kinematics, and I don't think we just don't have the time for that. And we're just trying to keep a simple rig for now. So let's go to side view. Select those three, and we'll move it in. We're just checking from all angles to see if the bones are actually inside the mesh. And let's give these bones a name. So we'll call this the upper arm dot L. This is the forearm dot L, and this is the hand dot L. And same thing for the arm bone. You want to select this one and then select the top for the chest, and hold Control P to make parent, keep offset, and that'll give a dotted line to the top of the chest bone. So now that you have the right side set up, I'm just gonna go to front view again. Let's do a box select of the arm bone and the leg bones. And then what you want to do is you want to duplicate it. So you can actually go to the bottom here, there's armature, and there's duplicate, but I like to use the shortcut, so it's Shift D. Shift D is to duplicate it. Now you don't want to move it anywhere, so just press the right mouse button to just leave it where it is. And while they're selected, you want to go back to armature on the bottom here, and go to mirror. And since we're trying to mirror it on the opposite side on the x-axis, we're using the x-axis, the global x-axis. We're just gonna hit X global, Wait.
Because I have
That didn't work. All right. Yeah, that didn't work. Oh. Okay, my bad. The character is actually not aligned to the center of the world for some reason. I thought he was, but apparently I actually at some point I moved him around, so he is not on the center of the axis. So that's all right. We can still mirror it, and we'll just move it manually. But just the point is that we're gonna actually just be able to just mirror it. We don't have to redo everything. Yeah. So let's go back to mirror. Let's try X local and see that that works. Nope, that doesn't work. So anyway, we'll just hit enter, and we'll just manually move it ourselves. Yeah, that'll work. All right. So same thing as the tentacle. Once you have all the rigs set up, the skeleton bones, you want to select the mesh first, and then have the bone selected as the active object. And while we're in object mode, hold Control P, and we'll give it automatic weights. So what are weights? Weights are how the bones influence the mesh. And if you want to check how the bones are influencing the mesh, the weights, you can actually select the mesh, and you can go in where you're selecting object mode, you're going to select weight paint. And that'll show you where each bone influences what parts of the mesh. The blue parts are the ones that are not being affected. The red parts are really affected. Like they are like the primary the zone where the bone is mostly affecting it. And the yellow and the green, the blue, the lighter blue. So you can actually paint the influence of each bone on the mesh. And since we currently have the shin bone selected on the right side, we want to check the influence for the other bones, the weights. So go to next to the wrench. There is the object data here, the 3 dots, and it'll give you a list of all the bones that you have currently. So you can select the hip, the chest, upper arm, forearm, hand, and you can see how it's affecting each part of the mesh here, and where it's most affected is again the red area. So the hip is actually not. Well, there's a little bit of influence there, but mostly it's for the back of his back, and that's all right. We'll just see how it moves. That's just to show you that you can actually change the influence of these of the weights here, and you can actually just to give you an idea, just to let you know that you can actually change the strength of these paints, the weight painting here, by going to the tools panel on the left side, and under brush, you can actually increase your radius or decrease it, increasing the weight and the strength. So if you just want to paint lightly, just adjust those values there on the slider. But that's not what I'm going to do. I'm just going to test this out. So let's go back into object mode so that we can start posing this guy. Have the bone selected and hit pose. And we'll start moving him. All right. So here you can actually see how it's not deforming correctly. That's because of the weights, and that's where you want to go back into the weight painting and adjust the weights there. So let's go back into our mesh and weight paint, and where that bone was, the upper arm. we just want to reduce the influence there. So if we want to reduce something, not add weight to it, go to the tools panel, and where the brush is yellow here, instead of draw, you want to subtract.
Okay. I mean, he was pretty bad. So like his last
He was
choice
trying to do random shots so I could like fill up the
he
context
legitimately
for
talks.
Monday.
So that'll just reduce that area.
See what it's Oops. The reflectors are boy. But basically, all you have to do is
So we'll just reduce the area around his, because we just want it to affect the upper arm, not too much of the shoulder. And I think this this model is actually not really optimized for the armpit area here. There should be a little bit more of a space for the armpit to actually bend, but that's all right. We'll just use this guy for now. All right, and let's go to the other side. Upper arm dots. Oh, actually, for some reason it didn't work. The naming convention .L and .R should have worked for the mirror. If we mirrored it, it should have been .R automatically. But for some reason it didn't work. I think it's because maybe the character wasn't centered in the center of the world. So that's all right. We don't have to actually name it correctly for now. Just reduce the influence there. All right. So we're done with that. Let's go back and move his arm bones. Go back into pose mode. Side view, front view. It's still a little wonky, but that's all right. He doesn't have to bend all the way down, or his arms don't have to do that. Right. We'll just have it like resting on the side like that. So actually, the other side is actually working a lot better than his left side here. But that'll work for now. So let's do a walking animation. We're just gonna do a simple walking animation, since he has pretty stubby little legs and he doesn't have feet. So we don't have to worry about the details. We're just gonna make him walk like a chibi little character should. So let's do what we did before with the tentacle. Let's go to animation mode. And let's do side view on orthographic so that we can actually move his arms and legs side to side. So let's set this as our first key pose. You know what? Actually, our first key pose should be a little bit like this. There you go. All right, let's use this as our first key pose. Remember when, so the good thing is to go back to pretty much any animation guide for walking. Just Google walk cycle in Google Images, and it'll bring up all your keyframes for walking. So you can use this as a reference point for the bobbing of his head, the position of his legs, and one other good thing is to also notice where his arms sway. So while he has his front foot placed, the arm on the same side of his that leg that's placed on the front should be going back. So we'll use that as a reference. Oops. Yeah. Oh, that's not right. Alright, I had the wrong bone selected. There you go. Let's use this. Alright. And we can actually even do a little bit of a hip sway. Oh, that's not. Or just like a body sway there. Or, I think it should be the other way. Yeah, like that. Perfect. Alright, so we'll key pose this. Let's bring this guy to the front. There you go. So, again, hit I, and we'll keyframe the whole body, the whole character. That is frame 0, which is actually out of our range. And let's say, I don't know, let's just pick a frame. Let's do 10. And then we'll have the middle keyframe. Forgot what the proper term for that is, but this is the point where his legs are crossing. Oops. That's that. Oops.
Okay.
Alright, now for the other leg. Move that up a little bit. Like that. So this is I forgot the name for this pose, but it's like the middle pose where the legs are pretty much crossing paths, and the arms are just in the middle. Oh, by the way, to go to the other side, so there's front view, which is 1 on the numpad. If you hit Control and press the 1, you'll go to back view. So 3 is the side view on the right. Hold Control and press 3 on the numpad, and you'll go to the left side. I'll just have it like that. So you get the idea. You're just keyframing these poses out, and it'll just do the in-betweens automatically like here. You can already test it out, see if it looks right. So that looks pretty good. We'll just keep going on. I'm just doing this 10 frames at a time. So the next frame is at 20. Forward. So a lot of this is just going to be a lot of just tedious work, but if you're into details, you can actually really get into this. Let's go to the other side and move this leg back. Like that. And bring this arm forward since it's moving the opposite way. Like that. I'll just bring it up. And bring this arm back. That doesn't look right. We'll just make it look more natural, like that. There you go. And also the body is bent the other way, so that's why.
Switch videos from
Yeah, like that. So we'll keyframe that.
now I'm adding full animation in this, which are gonna like makeshift and
And you can see him
see how that goes.
moving pretty well.
Yeah.
I guess we can just reduce the body turn there. We don't need that much. Looks like he's dancing.
Yeah, that's basically.
Alright. Now we'll go back into this middle frame here. But the cool thing is I can actually just copy this whole keyframe by zooming in and hit A to deselect everything, and hit the B button to box select the middle frame here. And yeah, you just want to control, copy, and paste it to frame 30. Oh, also another thing is if you want to copy keyframes, you have to select the keyframes, the dots, but also the bones as well in the dope sheet. So you want to box select these parts here to select all the bones. And then now you can actually Control C to copy it and Control P to paste it. And that'll just paste this keyframe to the end here. And we'll test it out. We'll end it at frame 30. And let's play it. So he's looking a little bit robotic. We're just gonna have to see where. Oh yeah, of course. What's up? Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect. But I just want it to look a little bit natural. And his. Oh yeah. You can do that by just copy and pasting the keyframes, which is what I did. I thought that would work, but let's see. He ends it right there, and he starts there. So yeah, just make his arms look right. Yeah, let's try that. So the starting frame here, press A to What I was actually gonna do was get his arms close to where his arms start out in frame 0 here. So maybe I can actually just manually move his arms back a little bit. And this guy goes forward. And this one should be going back to straight. Oops. I accidentally put a keyframe next to that one. So what we'll do is just hit A to deselect everything. Just select that and delete the keyframes by just pressing the delete button, delete keyframes, and we'll select that and press G to move it back to frame 30. And that can all be done in the dope sheet. So let's try that. Just want to try jumping. It's still a little jumpy, but that's just because I'm being lazy. I'm trying to finish this, wrap this up. Yeah, actually that's what I usually do. So yeah, let's do that. We'll just have the in-between save us. So select that, select all the bones in the dope sheet, Control C, and set it there. You know what? I'm gonna actually. If you like an in-between and you want to keyframe it, just go to that frame and hit I and do the whole character, and then I will delete this so that I can have a little tail at the end to transition to that in theory that should work, I think. Or you know what? Here's a simple solution. No, I should be playing 30 because I'm ending at 30. I. Oh right. Yeah, you're right. Okay, that's right. But I also have another idea. That's looking a lot better. At least it's not jumping. But his body is actually rotating. So we're ending it there. And it's gonna look a lot more natural if I just start twisting his body there, I think. Like that. So we'll keyframe that, and let's see how that works. And you know what? If all else fails, let me just scale that down, make him walk really fast. There you go. So sometimes when you're scaling it, it'll just delete keyframes because it's so compressed. But that's in your control. Whoa. Oh, yeah. That is at 16. Let's try it now. There you go. Yeah, you predicted it. It's a little. He's walking with a little limp, but you know, he's had a really rough day. Oh, you know what? Another good thing to do is to also animate his since his body's rotating, you want to just rotate his head just to keep it level, and that'll help fix the roboticness of his walk right now. But yeah, you can always do little things to tweak it, and there's also the graph editor as well. So that's just to give you an idea of how to animate a character. We can actually export this out into a file that you can actually bring into Unreal or Unity now. So that's going back to what I mentioned before, the action editor. So you want to go to the action editor, and while you have this this walk cycle in the dope sheet selected, you want to hit new, and we'll call this the walk. And hit the F here. This will actually save your animation into the file, so that when you bring it into Unreal Unity, it'll actually be listed out in the engine itself, and you can actually use the animation. So everything will transition really nicely. It'll import smoothly. So we'll call this the walk. And if you if you select the bone, you can actually see all the keyframes in the action editor here. All right, we'll call this the walk. Walk cycle. There you go. We can actually just delete this. Click on the X there. It'll still be listed there, but it won't be saved into the file itself. You want to hit the F button for the walk cycle here, and this will bring it into the game engine whichever one you're using. So we'll save this, and we'll go back into object mode. I think we're done here in the animation, but we'll just stay here just so that we can actually see the dope sheet. We'll select the mesh, and then select the bone after, so that is the active selection. And go to File, Export, and we'll export it as an FBX. Make sure you have selected objects checked. That's just going to export whatever you're selecting, which is the mesh and the bone. And you don't have to do anything here, but just make sure that Z is up and Y is forward. Y forward. There you go. And that'll just give it you an easier time to adjust any animations in the game engine itself, because Unreal usually does the Z up axis. So once you have that, we'll call this Ninja Anim for animation. And we'll export it. So that is, this is this is not my primary computer. All right, I'm having a hard time finding it, but yeah, it's somewhere here. And here it is. Okay, this is the one you want to import. And when you import this into, say, Unreal, I can actually do that, but since you guys are using Unity, I don't know exactly how Unity does their animations, but it should be the same thing. You're just importing the FBX, and it'll just import the mesh, the rig, and also the animations. And just look up a YouTube tutorial on how to hook up those animations using the FBX, because the FBX should have the animation file in it already. That's already baked into the file. So yeah, there you have it. That's the rigging and animating tutorial. You can actually get into a lot more in-depth tutorials on YouTube. Just look up inverse kinematics to have the bones affected, and you can see how the feet is planting on the ground here. So that's all inverse kinematics, and that'll be good for feet and hands. So yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. And I hope you guys have a good time.